Hello again, and welcome back to Educator.com's Advanced PHP with MySQL course. In today's lesson, we're going to be continuing development of our web application. Today we're going to be starting with a new version of the web application, version 3.0, and we're going to be incorporating what we learned in our last lesson about how to write to files. And basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be, in our last web application, if we actually look at the last version of it, we had created an admin site where we could add an item to the store and add an item to an department. And what we did was we set up forms that didn't really actually perform the function. They were sort of just basic forms that were a template. And in this lesson, what we're going to do is we're actually going to implement the functionality, which is going to involve writing to files. For example, our items.txt file and our departments.txt file. So if we actually look at, for example, our old version, version 2.0 of the admin site, we'd created this add item form where we could add an item to the store. And select the image file extension, provide a description, a price, a name, and so forth. And then when we click on add item, it's not actually adding it to the store, but it's basically saying that it would have created a new item in the store with item number 1007, and then it just outputs the information that would have been stored for that item. Now, one thing to note is that if you remember from version 2.0, we have a getLastItemAdded function, and what that function is it reads our file we added in the last web application lesson called lastadded.txt. And lastadded.txt just contains simply the item ID of the last item added to the store. So when we add a new item to the store, we read from this file, we increment it by 1, set that as the ID of the new item, and then we go ahead and update the file. And we're actually going to update the last added text file. That's what we're actually going to be doing in this lesson. So this item 1007 is generated by that getLastItemAdded function. We also had, excuse me, a admin page called Add Item to Department, where we could add, for example, item 1001 to Department 3. And it wasn't actually implementing the functionality. It was just saying item 1001 would have been added to Department 3. What we're actually going to do is, in this lesson, we're actually going to make this functional. We're going to write to our departments.txt file, adding the new item number to a particular department's line. So in this case, for example, we would add, actually if we go and look at departments.txt, for department 1, we would actually be adding an item number to it, 1001. So now 1001 would be part of the items department, part of the third department, which is the sporting goods department. So because we're going to be writing to files, we need to actually, one of the things we're going to be doing in this lesson is updating our 3 functions that are used to open our items data file, our departments data file, and our last added data file. The way it worked in the last web application, if we look at, for example, opens departments data file, it opens each file with this R access mode, which is a read-only access mode. Because we're going to be, move that back down, because we're going to be writing to files, we need to have the option of opening the files in non-read-only form. And if you notice, for open items data file, we had specified R as the access mode as well, and for open last added file, we specified R as well. What we're going to do in our new version of the web application is we're going to modify these functions slightly so that they take an optional parameter that's going to allow us to specify another access mode other than read. Read will be the default access mode, but we can also specify, for example, append mode or overwrite mode. So if we look at these updated, for example, open departments data file, if we look at the updated function in version 3.0, we can see that it actually takes an optional parameter now called access mode. And basically the first thing we do is we test. If access mode hasn't been provided, if it has the default value of null, then we're just going to open the file in read mode. So this is going to allow current calls to open department's data file to still work because they're not going to be providing an attribute, excuse me, a file access attribute. If one is provided, meaning access mode is not null, we're going to open the file in that access mode. So for example, we can open it in append mode, which should be specifying the lowercase letter a. And we've done that update for open items data file, as you can see here, and open last added file as well. So basically, the default mode, if you call the function without an access mode, is going to be open the file in read mode. If you provide an access mode, PHP or our application is going to open it in whatever access mode you specify. So on our additem.php form, let's go back to, this is what the form looked like. And what it did in our last application was it was sort of a dummy form. It would just output, as we just saw, item 1007 would have been added. These are the attributes. Well, now we're going to make it functional and make it actually add an item to the database. So actually what we're going to be doing is creating a function called insert item. And what that's going to do is it's going to be passed an associative array of all of the information that's provided for a new item on the additem.php form, and it's going to basically go ahead and add that item to the items.txt file. If you'll remember, our items.txt file is this delimited, each line is a delimited string that specifies all of the different data fields for a particular item. So insert item is going to create a new line in this items.txt file for the new item added to the store. And to do this, we actually are creating two additional helper functions to do that. One is called create item data string, and what that's going to do is basically take the associative array of information about the new item and put it into that into the form of that delimited string that our items.txt file requires. And so this is a function that's going to basically take in the array of data and now put the formatted string. We're also going to have a new function called update last item added, because when we add a new item to the store, we're going to be reading that last added.txt file to find out what the ID of the last item added to the store was. We're going to be incrementing it for the new item. So then what we need to do is go ahead and update that last added file so that when we try to add another item to the store, it's going to have an appropriate number. It's going to have a properly incremented number. So this update last item added function is going to be able to do that. So actually, if we go, let's go take a look at the code for in version 3.0 for insert item. And what you can see is we pass it an associative array of item information. And actually, if we go and look at the new version of additem.php, it's the old version. What we actually do in the data processing section at the beginning of the file, if the action of the form is to add item, if the information provided for a new item is valid, then we're going to be calling this new insert item function, and we're going to be passing it this associative array new item, which, as you can see up here, is our post variable. It's an array that contains all of the information submitted on the form, the item's name, its price, its description, and its image file extension. So when we call insert item, we pass it that associative array. And the first thing that insert item is going to do is actually call this get last item function, which we had learned about in our last lesson, which reads that last added.txt file to find out the ID of the last item added to the store. We're going to increment it by 1, and we're going to say that that's the ID of the new item. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add to this item associative array that was passed into insert item, we're going to add this new item ID to that, because when we submitted that form, the new item didn't have an ID yet. So we're going to add that to it. Then what we're going to do is basically open that item's data file for writing, and we're going to open it in append mode, because what we're going to be doing is just adding a new line to that file at the end of the file for this new item. And as you can see here, we're making use of our new version of open items data file. and we're passing it in access mode. In this case, we're passing it the letter A, which is to open it in append mode. Then what we do is, before we write to the file, we need to create that delimited string of all of the item's information. So we're making use of this helper function I just mentioned called create item data string, and we pass it this associative array of all of the item's information, which contains everything that was submitted on that post form, as well as this new item ID that we added, that we generated. If we go look at create item data string, basically it does a little bit of checking at the beginning just to make sure that there's at least 5 items in this array that you're passing to it, because an item has 5 data fields. And then all it does is it basically builds up this item data string starting with the item ID all the way through the image file extension. And then it returns the delimited string that it creates. And then basically after that we add a new line to it, because every time we add a new item to the file, we want to put it on a new line, so we end each line with a new line character. And then we go ahead and we simply write that string, the new item's data string, with the appended new line character to the file, and then go ahead and just close that items.txt data file. Now, if it was successfully written, we test to see that it was successfully added to the items.txt file. Then what we need to do is we need to go ahead and update our last added.txt file. Because now, let's say the new item in the store is item 1007. If another user tries to go and add a new item to the store, they're going to get that the last item added was 1006. What we need to do is update it to 1007, so when they add a new item to the store, it becomes 1008. And that's where this helper function, update last item added, comes in. Basically, we call that function specifying the ID of the new item. So we're basically going to erase the old item ID from last added.txt and add the new item. And then we're just going to basically do a little checking to make sure it worked okay. And then if it worked out fine, we're going to return from this insert item the ID generated for this new item. So if we actually go and take a look real quick at update last item added, what it does is we pass it the new item ID that we want to set that last added file to the value of. And so what we do is we open the last added file. In this case, we're opening it, we're passing it the access mode identifier W, which is overwrite mode, which means we're going to open the file in write mode, and we're going to erase all the contents and put the file pointer at the beginning. So we're going to basically, when we open that file, we're going to erase the last item ID, which for our example we've been working with was 1006. Then all we do is we go ahead and we write the new item ID to the file. So now that file contains the updated ID of the last item added to the store. Perform a little just error checking, or make sure that the file is closed okay. And then if it was successfully updated with the new item ID, we return true, and if not, we return false. And so that's basically how the insert item function works. So now let's go actually take a look at what it looks like in practice. So this is the new version, version 3.0 of our form. And the form looks exactly the same, but it's what's going on behind the scenes that's going to happen. It's actually going to insert a new item. So let's say if we add another basketball to the store. And then let's say it's going to have a GIF image, and we go ahead and add the item. Click Add Item. It's going to say the item was successfully added and it's been assigned item 1007. So what it did was it read that last added.txt file, saw that the last item added to the store is 1006, set the new item ID to 1007, and updated that file. So if we go and look at our data files, PSPad actually is going to say, hey, these files have been that I already had open or have been changed, so do you want me to refresh it? Say yes. So if we go in items.txt, we can see that a new line has been added, 1007, it says, and then it has all the information that we provided, basketball number 2, $24.99. Additionally, last added text has been updated so that instead of saying 1006, it now says 1007, because this last item we added to the store was in fact 1007. So now that this item has been added to the store, if we actually go back and look at version 3.0 of the store, and if we click on View Cart, which shows all of the items that we currently have in the store, we can see at the very bottom here that we have this new item, basketball number 2. Now you'll see that the image is not present, And that's because we didn't upload an image for this file, and we're actually going to get to that in our next web application development lesson. But for right now, it just leaves a placeholder for that image, and actually if we click on it, basketball number 2, it works with the item.php page. It displays all the information about the item and so forth. And so that's how we implement the functionality of adding a new item to the store. And you can see that you can do that as many times as needed. Let's say add some apparel. Now it says that the item was to the store. It was added to the store. It now has item 1008. Again, if we go back and look at our refreshed files, we can see last added text has been updated to 1008. And items.txt has been added with a new line representing that new item in the store. And when we go to view our cart, we can see that actually there's that other item 1008 has been added to the store as well. So the other form we had created when we did our last version of the admin application was we created a form called add item to department.php, which, as we saw earlier, it's basically you enter the ID of an item you want to add to a particular department, and then you enter the department ID of the department you want to add it to, and it'll go ahead and add that. On our last form, it was just sort of a mock form that didn't really have any behind-the-scenes action. Well, now we're actually adding that functionality. We're creating a function called add item to department, which is actually going to basically add that item to the department. Now what that means is that it's going to make an update to departments.txt file. And so, for example, if we added, as mentioned before, if we wanted to add item 1001 to department 3, the way that would look in our department's text file would be to update this last data field, which is a comma delimited list of all of the items in the particular department. And so our add item to department function is going to do this. And if we look at add item to department, in the processing section of the form at the beginning, we just had sort of a placeholder here. We tested that when a person submits an item ID and a department ID, we just checked to make sure that they both existed, and then we'd output a message saying, okay, this item would have been added to the department. Well, now we're going to fill in this placeholder, and in version 3 what we're actually going to do is we're going to be calling this add item to department function, and that's going to take two parameters, two arguments. One is the item ID of the item we want to add to the department, and one is the department ID to the department we're adding it to. We check to make sure that it was added okay, and then at the bottom we simply are outputting a message that says it was successfully added to the department. In using this add item to department function, we're creating two additional helper functions. One is create department data string, which is just like what we had seen when we added a new item to the store, where we had create item data string. We're basically going to have a function that's going to take an array of information about a particular department and create that delimited string that follows the format in department.txt. And here it's a delimited string with 3 different fields, where the third field is a comma separated list of all of the item IDs for the items in the department. And so that's the create department data string function. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to create another helper function that's actually going to go through the process of making that change to our departments.txt file, where it's actually going to add, for example, 1001 to that common delimited string for department number 3. So that's what the update department does. And one thing to note is that this update department function is going to make use of a file function, which is provided in PHP. And basically what file does is you provide it the name of a file, for example. And what it does is it reads every line in that file, and it creates an array that an index array that contains each line of that file. So, for example, if we use file to read departments.txt, it would read file would return an array that contains 3 elements. Each element would be 1 line in the file. So it would be the first element would be this string here, the second element would be this string here. and what that's going to allow us to do is to do some processing on that departments.txt file. So let's take a look at our add item to department function. Basically what it's going to do is when we go ahead and specify the item ID and the department ID of the item we're adding and the department that we're adding it to, we're going to go ahead and load the information for the particular department. And we're going to use the getDepartment function for that. And the reason we're doing that is that we're going to test to see if the item ID that the user has supplied, if that item is already in that department. So basically what we do is we extract the items array from the department that's part of this department associative array returned by getDepartment. And that items array, again, is that is an index array of all of the items in the department, item IDs in the department. We loop through it, and if the item ID we're trying to add to it already exists, we're just going to return true because the item's already in the department. If the item's not already in the department, then we're going to add that item ID to the department's array of item IDs, which is it has this key items. And then what we're going to do is pass this associative array that contains all of the department's information. It contains its ID, its name, and that indexed array listing all of the items that are in the department. In this case, it's going to include the ID of the new item we're adding to it. We're going to pass that to the updateDepartment function, and then if it returns true, and then if the update works, we're going to return true. And if not, we're going to return false. So the action of actually writing to the file is going to occur in this updateDepartment function. And if we go and look at that, we can see that the first thing we do is we use this file function that we talked about. If you actually click on it in the documentation, it'll take you to the PHP documentation that basically says it reads the entire file's contents into an array, which is, as we had mentioned. And so what we're going to do is create an array called department lines, which is just going to be an index array of all the lines in department.txt. And then what we're going to do is we're going to search through this array that we have of all of the different departments in our store until we find the line that contains the department we're trying to add it to. So basically what we do is we loop over this array, and then we basically use the explode function to separate all of the information that's contained in each line of departments.txt. We're going to separate on this department's data separator, which is the vertical bar, and we're going to extract the first element of the array that explode function is going to return, which is going to be the ID of the department. And then what we're going to do is if the department ID of the department we pass to this function that we're trying to update equals the ID of the particular line that we're looping over in the file, then we're going to set this variable current department index equal to that file and break out of the loop. So basically what that's doing is we're basically searching through the departments.txt file to find the line number that contains the information about the item we're looking for. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create a string that's an updated version of that department, which is going to contain the new item ID of the item that's been added to the department. And then basically what we're going to do is just go ahead and rewrite that whole departments file, looping through all of the department lines that we read from it originally, as well as this updated line. So basically what we're saying here is we're adding to the department lines array, which contains all of those lines we had read in from the department's text file, and at the index, at the position where we found the department that we're looking for, we're going to add this department data string followed by a new line. And create department data string works just like our create item data string. Basically what it does is it creates that delimited line for a department, which contains the department ID, the name, and then all the items in the store separated by vertical bars, and then contains all of the items in the store in this third data field, items in the department in this third data field separated by a comma. And so you can see here, the first thing it does is it creates this blank department string. We add the department ID to it along with the vertical bar delimiter. We add the name, the vertical bar delimiter, and then basically what we do is we loop over that array items, the indexed array items that's part of the department that contains all of those IDs, including the ID of the item we're trying to add to the department, and then we basically create that comma delimited list and then add that to this department string. And then we return the department string. So now that we have this new department string for this that has updated list of items in it, basically, as mentioned, we're just going to open our department's data file, and we're actually going to open it up in overwrite mode, which means we're going to erase all the contents of it, and then we're basically just going to loop over all of the lines that were previously read from the department.txt file, as well as the new line that has the updated department string, and then we're just going to write them out to the file, do some error checking, and make sure that the file is closed okay, and to see that there weren't any errors. And so, actually, it's kind of a little tedious what we have to do, in that we have to read all. In order to add this item to the file, we have to read all of the items out, search for the line that the current department we want to alter is. We have to change that, and then write all those lines back. And that's one way of doing it, and there are some more complicated ways as well. But as you can see, it's kind of a tedious process. And as we progress in the course, when we change our sort of backend for the system from these flat data files to our database, it's going to make that a lot easier. We're not going to be having to do all this tedious work, because the database is going to do it for us. So actually, if we go and look at the new version of the web application in action, if we go to add item to department, so for example, we just added 1008, and if we go look at the store, here's item 1008, men's pants. They show up in the view cart, but let's say we want to add them to the apparel department. Well, currently when we click on the apparel department, it doesn't list this new item. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our new implemented functionality for adding an item to department to go ahead and add that to department, to our apparel department, which is department number 1. So the pants item that we added was 1008. The department ID that we're adding it to the apparel department is department 1. When we click add to department, it's going to say it was successfully added to the department. Now if we go ahead and refresh our apparel page, we can see that pants now shows up in the add department page. Additionally, if we look over at departments.txt, it's actually been updated, and you can see that this apparel department line in our departments.txt file has actually had this 1008 item ID added to it. And so that's how so that's what happened when we ran that updated department function. It went through and it updated the line for this particular department. And so that's how we add a new department to the store. So now we have in our admin website, we have a functionality implemented for add item, as well as adding an item to a department. And what we're going to do in our next web application development lesson is actually improve the add item form so that we can actually upload an image as well. So that ends today's lesson. Thank you for watching Educator.com, and look forward to seeing you next time.